We're just stretching. I'll call this regularly scheduled meeting of Bridgewater Town Council to order. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll declare the agenda as approved. And any announcements from members of council?
Yes, Your Worship, I have one.
Yes, please.
Very important announcement, to pay attention. Actually, this is on behalf of the volunteers at the Bridgewater Legion Branch 24 in Bridgewater. Because of COVID, they've had to do income taxes at their homes, but they was able to do 425 this year. And most of the time they went and picked them up, done them and took them back, or sometimes even done them over the phone. But they managed to get that many done this year, which was awesome.
Wow, that is amazing. Well, thank you to them. I know that's a very valuable service to obviously hundreds of people in our community. So thank you to all those volunteers. Any other, Andrew? Sorry, Deputy Mayor Tanner?
I have one. It was just an incredibly busy weekend of hockey on the South Shore. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to Luke Woodworth from Bridgewater, who got pulled number 11 and is going to Drummondville, hopefully in the fall, if all bodes well. So that was a huge draft pick. And I know Connor Benjamin in Bridgewater is going to Cape Breton Islanders camp. And I hear today that a few others have regionally in Lunenburg County have ranked really well and are going to places like the Lumberjacks, and Ryan Hopkins going 23rd to Moncton. So there's a lot of great sport as usual coming out of Lunenburg County, coming out of Bridgewater specifically, and we've got our fantastic pickleball players and Wayne Thorburn as well. But anyway, it's a great weekend of hockey, and shout out to those young men for doing so well.
That's great. Congratulations to everybody. Anyone else? No? Okay. You have the May 25th council meeting minutes there. Any errors, omissions, or deletions? Hearing none, we will declare the minutes as approved, and we'll go into our planning items. And the first one is a public hearing. So again, we will leave this meeting, go into the public hearing, and then we'll be back to this one after. Okay. Thank you. So I will call this public hearing to order, and we're here to deal with the matter of 493 King Street. And I will just advise that all the statutory requirements have been met and circulated and are available online. I will now turn this over to the planner.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so staff has been working on the application for a development agreement at 493 King Street. And the application is to construct a mixed-use, multi-unit residential and commercial development at the corner of Phoenix Street and King Street, where the old Bank of Montreal was. The applicant intends to construct a 19-unit, 6-story residential development with 5 floors of residential and ground floor commercial. And as shown in this rendering, it would incorporate the existing 2-story brick building with 4 additional stories that would be designed to complement the existing building. The existing 2nd story of the building would be converted into residential units as well. And the intent is to provide a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom units, and the 5th floor units of the development would be 2 stories. So this is a view from the Phoenix Street side, and there's a proposed addition to the back of the existing building, which would take the building about 5 feet from the property line. And buildings in the C1 zone are permitted to build right up to the property line. On this addition, there would be a roof deck with access for all residents, and at the bottom of the addition, there would be a landscaped courtyard and a second entrance to the residential units. The development agreement would outline specifics of what would be permitted and required, and unless otherwise included in the development agreement, the land use bylaw would apply. The permitted use would be a multi-unit residential building up to a maximum of 19 dwelling units with ground floor frontage occupied by a commercial use with more than 50% of the ground floor area used for commercial purposes. The massing and exterior design of the building would be in substantive accordance with the elevation drawings. And the development falls within the King Street Architectural Control Area and is guided by the urban design requirements as well. And neither have to be strictly adhered to for development agreements, but they're important to take into consideration for their overall intent. So this is one of the elevation drawings from the Phoenix Street side. The architectural controls say that there can be no increase to the height of the main building. However, the MPS, the municipal planning strategy, states that there's no limit height on King Street buildings. And the nature of this development did require an increase in height. This is also supported in the aim to bring density residential units and mixed use to the downtown core. The building would be no more than 6 stories, and there would be a 4-foot step back at the base of the 3rd story, and that would be to promote an inviting and comfortable experience when walking along the street. The top story would have a distinct look from the rest of it, for example, through a different cladding shade than the rest of the building. And the design would emphasize the prominence of the corner building by including a bit of an angle on those additional stories. The main building would have to maintain the pre-1920s architectural style, and the developer would be required to use wood shingles or cladding on the addition to complement the existing building, unless otherwise requested by the building code for something like non-combustible cladding on certain facades. And for parking, there would be no fewer than 8 bicycle spaces on the property, and they would be located near the rear entrance off Phoenix Street. There's no room for vehicular parking on the property, so it would be located off the property off street. However, no set number of spaces is included in the development agreement. Staff are comfortable with the amount that the developer will choose, as prioritizing active transportation in the downtown is supported by policy. And the development agreement stipulates that a fence or adequate vegetation would be required at the rear of the building to provide a buffer to the adjacent single unit residential property. Amenity space is required for multi-unit residential buildings, and for this development, a minimum of 1,300 square feet would be required, and that would include individual balconies and a communal rooftop patio. The land use bylaw requires more amenity space for as-of-right developments than this. However, that doesn't have to be directly adhered to for a development agreement. And due to the limited existing building footprint, the commercial space in the building, and the nearby park, less would be required for this development. It would be required that facilities for the storage of solid waste shall provide visual separation from adjacent residential development and public areas. Stormwater runoff shall be equal to or less than pre-development stormwater peak runoff flows. And sanitary sewer services shall be developed and implemented based on the wastewater study received from the consultant. A public participation meeting was held on November 20th in 2019 at 6 p.m. in council chambers, and 7 members of the public attended. The main concerns were around parking, proximity to and effect on the adjacent residential dwelling on Phoenix Street, the effect of construction on the area, and the maintenance of the existing 2-story building. The town's policy was analyzed to ensure that the development is supported. There are overarching policies in the municipal planning strategy, as well as specific policies for general development, residential development, commercial development, built heritage, and development agreements. And the downtown and waterfront master plan is also relevant to this application. I'm not going to go over any more of the analysis in detail, as I did that for the first reading presentation, but staff finds that this development is supported in policy. So staff recommend that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater give second and final consideration to the proposed development agreement and enter into the development agreement regarding the property located at 493 King Street.
Great. Thank you very much. So we've had the overview by the planner, and our next part of the agenda is to ask if there's a presentation by the developer. We'll welcome Jody here as the developer. I don't know if you had anything that you wish to add.
No, Mackenzie really did a great job. Kind of sums up what our dreams and visions are for the site and the project. Honestly, I just thank you to the team for all the work they've done to kind of get it to this point. It's I know it's a bit of a thankless job at times, and I just want to say thank you. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything that you may be curious about, but she really did great.
Great, perfect, thank you. We had this public hearing open for the public to register to participate in, and I don't believe we had any members of the public with any concerns or positive or negative issues to address council with. Is that correct? Okay, perfect. Any questions from members of council on this, either for staff or for the developer?
I have just a quick question.
Councillor Graves?
So how is the parking going to work for 19 units? Where are the people going to park?
So the development agreement stipulates that there needs to be some parking, but it doesn't say how many spaces. So I believe the developer is working with the town to find some parking off-site, and that would be done separate to the development agreement.
Okay.
Correct.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yes, just a couple of questions to the developer. I have got a couple of people interested in that property, and they want to know how soon it's going to start and when can they move in. So it's all good stuff.
I don't have exact dates, but we, pending all goes well, next step is architects and engineers and having them do what they do to get us even closer to being able to start. But we are excited to get ready. We're excited to bring King Street back to life, and a few of the properties that we own there in the street. We've got started on one already, and this one is for sure our biggest one to date for us. That'll be a real change. So
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of council? I'll just say that whenever I see the presentation from planning staff with the how the building is going to potentially look, it gives me a lot of excitement for downtown. A game changer would be how I would describe it for downtown. And when I see, especially in this time of economic recovery, to be able to have a commercial property with a substantial amount of residential on top, putting customers literally in the downtown core around those shops and services. I'm excited for how the future of King Street when these developments move forward. But in order for it to move forward, we need council to make a motion. Is someone prepared to make that motion?
I will, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater give second and final consideration to the proposed development agreement and enter into the development agreement regarding the property located at 493 King Street in a manner similar to the draft development agreement dated June 8th, 2020, as shown in Appendix A of document 19-140B, and that the Mayor and Chief Administrative Officer are hereby authorized to execute the agreement only within the time frame described in the development agreement. Should the document not be signed within the time frame described in the development agreement, Council shall consider any request to sign the development agreement as a new application and follow the entire process required by the Municipal Government Act.
Seconded by?
I will second that, Your Worship.
By Councillor Thorburn. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Question.
Question being called. Yea or nay? Councillor McGuinness? You got to unmute there, Councillor.
Yes, yay.
Councillor Vergier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
I'm also in favor. Is it approved? It is, yes, it is approved. Sorry, it's approved, is it? It's been a long day already. So congratulations. This is great. We look forward to seeing this project take shape.
yeah, thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it.
We'll now adjourn the public hearing and go back to the regular council meeting. Okay, thank you. So we're returning to our regular scheduled meeting of Town Council, and our next item is the development agreement for multi-unit residential project on Oakland Drive, and I will turn that over to our planning team.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I will just share my screen. Can you see it there?
Yep.
Okay, great. So yes, this is for consideration of a proposed development agreement for townhouses on a private laneway at Oakland Drive. All right. So the proposal is to construct 14 townhouse units in 3 blocks, one of 7 units, 4 units, and 3 units on a private laneway on Oakland Drive. So we received this application late last fall. We needed some additional information, and in January we had a complete application. We've been putting it through our revised process. So we did the complete staff review before taking it to a public meeting. So this came to council for notification of a public meeting on April 27th. We held that public meeting on the 6th of May, and now we have the proposed development agreement here for you for first consideration. So the subject property is shown here in gray. It has comprehensive residential or R3 zoning, and has a variety of residential uses in the neighborhood as well as woodland gardens. So you've got, this is the duck pond and woodland gardens, if you can see my mouse on the screen. And we have single, semi-detached, and multi-unit residential housing throughout the neighborhood. So we have some high density, some comprehensive residential, 2-unit and single unit. It's quite a mixed residential neighborhood. So it's important to note that there is an existing development agreement. Sorry, my papers are making noise here. There is an existing development agreement on this property. So in 2012, council entered into a development agreement with the owner at that time to develop 16 units. And so lots 11 and 10, which are currently owned separately, were developed, and lots 9 through 3, including the road parcel, were to be developed in subsequent phases. Those phases did not happen, and some deficiencies do exist in the services and infrastructure that was created for the existing development. The current applicant did purchase the property remaining lots 3 through 9, and has put this proposal forward. So the intention is to replace the existing development agreement with a new one based on this proposal on the subject properties. But the existing 2012 development agreement would remain on the properties that are not owned by the applicant, if you follow all of that. Okay. So the proposal is for 14 townhouse units. The consolidation of lots 3 through 9 onto a single lot. The completion of Oakland Drive is a private laneway with 2 access points to Jubilee Road. The townhouses will be 2-story, 2-bedroom units. There'll be parking in front for each unit and a trail connection to woodland gardens. So this is just the rendering from the applicant of what the townhouse units will look like, and the elevation drawing for the 7-unit townhouse. So that shows the 7 townhouse dwellings all connected together there. All right, so the site plan, which you have here, shows, so the top of the screen is the west side, so closest to the outdoor pool, and the bottom of your screen is the east side of Oakland Drive, and that's closest to the top of the hill for Jubilee Road, just for reference. So lots 10 and 11 are at the top of the screen, and those are the ones where there's dwellings already built. And then the proposal here shows going around through to the east access point, and it shows a site, it says future dwelling. So they are proposing in the future adding another 7-unit building, but under consideration this evening is a 3-unit, then a 4-unit, and then a 7-unit dwelling. So this all meets the zone standards for front, rear, and side yard setback requirements. The development agreement will provide a variance for road frontage for the lot, which is enabled through the development agreement. So it's a slight reduction of about 2.75 meters in the frontage requirement. And it will also require the consolidation into one single lot. So this is collective style development, so all the units exist on a single lot. And it will remain a private laneway for these. So, and it's important to note up at the top of the screen that sort of gray pathway between lot 9 and 10 is a pathway onto a little sliver of town-owned land that connects into Woodland Gardens. And so the development of that path is part of the existing 2012 development agreement, is proposed in this one as well. So on May 6th, we had a public meeting. It was held virtually. It was our first experience with a virtual public meeting. And we required, as we have with the past 2 public hearings that we've held, we required registration in order to provide them with the link to join in on the meeting. No members of the public attended that. However, we did still hold the presentations, both of myself as the planner and the applicant. We both held those and streamed those on Facebook Live so that people could see that. We did mail our notices as normal to adjacent property owners. We had advertisement in the newspaper. We did have some comments that we received through email, and as a result of streaming the presentations on Facebook, we did have a couple of comments related to the development posted on the town's Facebook page, and some back and forth with at least one of the people who did make a comment. So we accepted comments until the 18th of May. We had said the 13th, but we had one submitted late. So we didn't have a discussion with any of the neighbors because nobody registered, but we did have some back and forth with some residents. So as planning staff, we've carried out a policy analysis around the zoning, current and future. We looked at strategic growth, the compatibility and integration of the proposal, the adequacy of our services, our traffic and AT, and also the environmental suitability. So upon analysis of that, just a couple of the main considerations. We reviewed the planning objectives within the municipal planning strategy. So we looked at how this, if this proposal is compatible, is it a compatible use in the area? It's providing a range of housing options, maximizing and using existing infrastructure, and also helping to develop our parks and open space network to meet the needs of the community. This is a very residential neighborhood. It's very similar. What's being proposed is very similar to the existing mix of housing in the area. It's 2-story, so low density. It's much lower than what is enabled in the zone by the type of zoning by development agreements. So in the comprehensive residential zone, you can have up to 25 units per acre. And this proposal, even with the future desired additional 7-unit building, so a total of 21. It's still only at 9.5 units per acre. Currently, it's with the 14 units, it's at 6.3 units per acre. This is going to be rental, which is a different offering than the other rental housing in that area. So all of those were taken into consideration. There's no affordable housing within the proposal, but it is helping to increase the rental supply within town, which is important as well. So the existing request and the existing permission in the proposed development agreement is for 14 units, and that is because there's an existing permission remaining within the 2012 development agreement for 14 units. So there's no additional request at this time over and above what has already been approved by council. So that's important. So the engineer said there was no requirement for additional wastewater offsetting because that was already considered back at the 2012, and that decision was made. The servicing to go under the laneway for these houses will be built by the developer. And the assessed capacity of Jubilee based on the type of development and the use of laneway. So there was a traffic study, and I'll mention a bit about the details of that traffic study. So that was considered, how can Jubilee accommodate an additional 14 units? It is a tertiary AT route, and the site is adjacent to Woodland Gardens, so great recreational opportunities for this development. It's also on a public transit route, important. So these are the categories in front of you of what elements are included in the development agreement that you have to consider this evening. So the permitted use of 14 units of residential on a private lane. There's considerations around building characteristics, landscape lighting, site access and parking, sanitary sewer and water, stormwater subdivision, and then what would be a substantive change. So how do we make changes and alterations to the proposal? So Appendix D of the report contains the development agreement that provides that. So the permitted use is proposed as collective multi-unit residential to a maximum of 14 dwelling units on a single lot fronting onto the private laneway. The building characteristics, so the massing and the exterior design, are to be in substantive accordance with the elevation drawing submitted. So that's the drawing across the bottom as provided in the rendering there, and the location to be in substantive accordance with the site plan that was provided. The next major section in the development agreement is around landscaping and buffering. So this is where the questions that we did receive, as well as some of the comments during the public meeting, were around how this proposal, how it integrates in with Woodland Gardens and the trail system that was developed at the back. So we had a lot of discussion and negotiation with the applicant around maintaining a 30-foot natural green space between the back property line for Woodland Gardens, of which is owned by the town, up to the buildings. So within that natural green space, which will be delineated on a landscape plan, there will be cutting without permission for anything that's over 4 inches in caliper. So that's the diameter of the tree. Stormwater management facilities will be allowed in that area. It's part of their plan to have some swales and area to detain water, slow it down and slow release it. As I said, that landscape plan will be required to be finalized and submitted to the development officer prior to issuing the development permit. And also key to that is the development of the pathway down into Woodland Gardens, which was an important part of the existing development agreement. And this map was created after the public meeting to provide some context as to how the development that's being proposed integrates in with the existing pathways and networks within Woodland Gardens. Because when you look at our mapping that shows our property lines and roadways, it shows here where the town pond brook and the existing path are shown to be development lots and a proposed street, which obviously is not happening. So also just to make a quick note, this overlay is not to scale, so it's just simply for context purposes. And so the mapping, I just wanted to provide this because it doesn't quite just the looking at the property mapping doesn't quite jive with what is actually happening on the ground. And so when you look at this and it shows coming down from Elizabeth Ave, and I think that's Walnut and Sharon, it shows extra street and development lots that aren't happening. We have developed a trailway, and there is a trail through here, and there is the Town Pond Brook that's happening. So, and all of this land in through here is zoned as park. So that did lead to some confusion during the public meeting. So the site access and parking, as I've said a few times already, it's proposed to be a private asphalt laneway. This laneway was created through a 1975 subdivision, the original subdivision for this area. So just say it's not a new proposal, and it was always planned to be a crescent-shaped laneway. So that is there. They're proposing 1 parking space per unit, which meets our requirements. They will also be providing communal bicycle parking for a minimum of 7 bikes, which is also a land use bylaw requirement. And the variance for the lot frontage will be granted via the agreement. As I mentioned, we did request additional information and a traffic statement to assess by a professional traffic engineer to sort of assess what the impact of this development and this road would be in the area. So considering the use, the residential townhouses, this is the summary of the results of that traffic statement, which was accepted by our engineering department, and no further mitigation measures were required as a result. So it's proposing, they also assessed it based on 21 units rather than the 7 that will be permitted in the DA, because they would like to eventually have the 21. So they did it for the full build out. And this is what they expect, that there'll be some new vehicle trips in the AM peak and the PM peak. It will follow the general pattern along Jubilee Road already, and they expect the traffic to be split evenly between the 2 access points. And even with other driveways, and there are some apartment buildings along Jubilee Road and within proximity, they didn't identify any significant impacts as a result of the proposal. So it is a shift as to what's there under the current development agreement, where it was planned at a time when things looked different for the larger, higher density developments just to the east of this proposal. Sanitary and water. So the servicing is all to be built by the developer to the Town of Bridgewater standards. Water will be turned over to the Public Service Commission. Sanitary may be turned over to the Town of Bridgewater. It's not required. They may request it. And if that is requested, then it would go through the process of any other infrastructure handover and turnover, which is governed by the town's design and construction standards. Should that happen, easements are required to enable our staff to be able to access and maintain and or fix anything that happens with the water or the sewer. And any existing deficiencies with the development thus far under the current 2012 agreement must be corrected prior to any occupancy permissions being granted. So that's sort of our hook. How do we ensure that the deficiencies that exist with the old idea for this property get fixed as part of this new proposal, and that is that they will not be able to occupy any of those buildings until those deficiencies are fixed. And Schedule D of the proposed development agreement contains all of the existing deficiencies and then how it connects back to the sections of the development agreement. So that was identified fairly clearly. Stormwater management, all post-development peak flows must be equal to or less than the pre-development peak flows. Stormwater management plan must be developed and submitted to the town engineer prior to the issuance of the development permit. And as I've already said, some of the stormwater management facilities will be permitted within that natural open space sort of buffer area that's being proposed. So they are proposing a swale. Those draft plans have been submitted to the department already, but they need to be reviewed and approved prior to development permit issuance. And finally, identifying what the substantive matters are for the development agreement. So we're suggesting that the permitted use, so that maximum 14 dwelling units being the substantive matter. So if there's any change to that, meaning the addition of that proposed 7-unit future dwelling. That would require a substantive amendment to the development agreement process. So that would require a wastewater study and any offsetting measures and analysis of the relevant site conditions, which obviously would include the infrastructure. It would also include notification of neighbors, a public meeting at the beginning of the process, as well as a public hearing prior to any changes made to the development agreement. So those are the substantive matters. So in terms of where we are at and how this may or may not proceed, depending on this evening, we had the application briefing and staff overview, which was completed. We provided that notice to council. We held the public participation meeting, and tonight you're receiving the planning analysis report and giving first consideration to the proposed development agreement. Should this progress from this evening, then it would move to a public hearing and council decision on July 13th. Then we'd publish notice in the local paper that council would be entering into a development agreement, and there would be a 14-day appeal period to the Utility and Review Board. So staff are recommending that town council give first consideration to the development agreement to permit a collective multi-unit residential development to a maximum of 14 units as proposed by Appendix D, and to schedule a public hearing during regularly scheduled council meeting on July 13th, 2020 at 6 p.m.
Great, thank you. Questions from members of council? Councilor Thorburn. Oh.
You're on mute, I believe, Councillor Thorburn.
There you
are.
There you go. I believe that it's going to be built to private standards, and it can't be taken over by the town because it's not built the way that the town would take it over. So that possibility will never take place.
The infrastructure underneath the private laneway, the road itself will not be built to public street standards, but the infrastructure underneath it will be built to town standards.
Yes, I understand that. My second point would be that snow removal. It looks like a very narrow street, and it doesn't look like there's very much room there to put any snow. So it kind of looks like it may have to be trucked away. And I was just wondering how that's going to impact the traffic for those residents trying to get out in the morning first thing, because I don't think it will be plowed by the town vehicles. I'm not sure.
It will be a private laneway, so it will be required to be plowed privately, unless there's another agreement that happens, but that has not been discussed to date.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Graves.
The question was answered.
Okay, perfect. Other questions from members of council? Is someone prepared to make a motion to give this first consideration?
I will, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I would move that town council of the town of Bridgewater give first consideration to the development agreement to permit a collective multi-unit residential development to a maximum of 14 dwelling units as contained in Appendix D of document 20-083A, and schedule a public hearing during a regularly scheduled council meeting on July the 13th, 2020 at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Councillor Frazier. Further discussion?
Question.
Question being called. Councillor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councillor Frazier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves? You gotta unmute.
Sorry, yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
And I'm in favor. So the motion is carried. I will be so glad we can meet in person. I gotta tell you, like Councillor McGuinness said, I miss you all. But yeah, so I do appreciate everyone muting when they're not speaking, but we have to unmute when we are speaking, and I'm getting tired of it myself. Great, thank you very much. Our next item is application for rezoning 42 Riverview. So lots of planning items today, and I'll turn that over again to planning staff.
So that's to Mackenzie.
Yeah, not much to say. We just wanted to bring forward the application. So it's an application to rezone 42 Riverview Drive from single unit residential to 2-unit residential. And that's in order to add a second apartment to that home or that house. So Riverview Drive is at the north end of King Street near the town boundary, and it is surrounded by other single unit residential zoning, 2-unit residential zoning, and a special commercial property as well. And we wanted to announce that the public participation meeting will be held on June 24th at 6 p.m. Virtually as well. And I'm also happy to answer any questions about it.
Are there any questions from members of council? So for the members of the public who might be wondering where that is literally the last street before you leave town as you're going up King. All right, so we'll look forward to that coming forward. Our next item is, and last under planning, is the first reading of the Sidewalk Cafe bylaw and land use bylaw.
Perfect. That's me as well. No presentation for this, but I'll just go over what was in the report a little bit. So a request was made by Devin Fraser of Firkenstein Brewing to lease 3 parking spaces in the town center parking lot for an outdoor patio. And on May 11th, council gave direction to prepare a 2-year lease agreement with Firkenstein for those 3 parking spaces and to make the necessary amendments to the Sidewalk Cafe bylaw and the land use bylaw to enable the use. So currently, sidewalk cafes are only permitted on existing elevated sidewalks. So the proposed amendments would allow them to be located on town-owned property as well, as long as it's adjacent to the primary use. And upon application, any proposals for the sidewalk cafes would still be reviewed by town staff to make sure that they can be accommodated. Currently, outdoor cafes on private property, so ones that don't go through the sidewalk cafe bylaw, if they're not using that public property, they have to add off-street parking spaces to accommodate an increase to the gross floor area of the existing development when there is an extension to the building. If it's an increase of more than 50% to the existing parking. So the amendments to the land use bylaw would remove this requirement, so parking does not have to be added. And also if parking is taken up with the addition, the amendment would make it so these spaces don't have to be replaced either. Staff is currently working on the lease for the town center parking lot and intend to bring it to council to the July 13th meeting. So staff are recommending that town council give first consideration to the amendments to the sidewalk cafe bylaw to permit outdoor cafes on adjacent town-owned property. And staff are also recommending that first consideration is given to the amendments of the land use bylaw to accommodate outdoor cafes and also schedule a public hearing for July 13th for that one.
Okay, thank you. Questions from members of council?
Mayor Mitchell, I'm going to declare a conflict on this simply due to similar interests and similar business.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just had a question. So I understand the removal of the need for, in some instances, for them to replace the parking. But if staff determine that parking does need to be replaced because of the impact, is that mechanism is staff still able to come back and say, in this particular instance, we do need you to provide parking somewhere else?
So the removal of the parking spaces is only for that that would be on a private property. So for example, if like Fancy Pants wanted to add to their building and take over some parking spaces, this amendment wouldn't make them either replace the parking spaces that are covered or add any more. So no, there wouldn't be any ability to require that. And it also depends on the use of the building. So usually in this case, it would actually be if there was an addition of 50% or more to the existing parking, and that's because of gross floor area. And so the land use bylaw looks at different uses and require certain amounts of parking based on different things. So usually for restaurants and cafes, it is based on gross floor area. So if that was the case, then we wouldn't be able to go back and say they'd have to do it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Someone prepared to make the first motion?
I can do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater give first consideration to the amendments of the land use bylaw as found in Appendix B of Document 20-088A to accommodate outdoor cafes and schedule a public hearing for July 13th, 2020. Or sorry, 2020.
Thank you.
That was right.
Yes. It's seconded by.
I'll second,
second
Your
that.
Worship.
We'll give. I don't know who was first on that. We'll give that to Councillor Graves. Further discussion.
Question.
Question being called. Councillor McGuinness.
Yay.
Councillor Frazier.
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn.
Yay.
Councillor McDonald.
Yay.
Councillor Graves.
Yay.
And I am in favor, so motion is carried. Someone prepared to make the next motion.
I can keep going with it.
Please, thank you.
I would move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the intent of the amendment to the Sidewalk Cafe bylaws as per Appendix A of Document 20-088A and proceed to second reading of the bylaw at a council meeting to be held on July 12th, 2020, and authorize staff to publish all public notices pursuant to Section 168 of the Municipal Government Act.
Thank you. Seconded by.
I'll second the motion.
Councillor Graves again. Further
Could we just
discussion?
note the change in the date, please, Mayor Mitchell? It's July 13th, not July 12th.
Yes. Noted. Thank you. Councillor McGuinness.
Yay.
Councillor Frazier.
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn.
Yay.
Councillor McDonald.
Yay.
Councillor Graves.
Yay.
And I am in favor. Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you to our planning staff. That was a lot this week. Everyone's been so busy. But this is all good. Lots of action happening in Bridgewater. We're going down to reports and recommendations, and we have the 2020-2021 capital budget monthly review. So just for the public, as part of our kind of COVID strategy, if you will, we made the decision that even after we passed the budget, that we did want projects, capital projects, as they were coming forward to us, to have us give, in some cases, probably a sober second thought, just because, you know, things are a little up in the air now, although it's nice to see the town was busy as people this weekend, as people were out and about, and so the recovery is on, but there'll be lots of work to do. So we have the items in there for July for consideration. Again, if there's no changes, then it's status quo. The Bridgewater Junior High School crosswalks, I believe that is out, just because we are still having that conversation with the school board, and happy to say regular communication has been set up, so we will be having that. But at this time, the school board would like some more time to discuss what a crosswalk looks like, and so that one is coming out. I don't think there's. Is there anything else in July that really council feels like these are all kind of necessities?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to ask the CAO, do you need any direction in terms of taking out that crosswalk, or is it just come out on its own?
I think at this point, I'll just give staff direction to defer taking any action on that one until we've had some time to confirm with the school board what exactly their intention would be in terms of a request or an ask of the town.
Okay. And my other question was, noting how fast things move, do you need us to address August now, or is that coming at a future meeting?
We'll bring it to the council meeting in July.
Okay.
So yeah, come at the first council meeting there and give you time, unless you're happy to do it now, but.
I mean, there's certainly nothing that struck me as needing to come out, but we can, I know the arena's in there that we probably wanted to discuss.
Yeah, and the my understanding is the North Parkade repairs.
Right.
So we had talked about looking at a traffic study and whether or not we wanted to see that, parking study. And we wanted to see that done prior to looking at any of the repairs there. So it may require a little bit of discussion and debate.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's leave that to the July meeting. Any questions on any of the July items? Okay, thank you. Our next item is amendment to this is notice. Sorry, I'm trying to work two mice at the same time, two computers there. Yes.
Sorry, just on the last one, if we were going to initiate a traffic study, wouldn't we have to do that relatively quickly to then allow for repairs to actually occur in the North Parkade if that's what we wanted to do?
Yeah, so parking study. I said it wrong when I said traffic.
Yeah, sorry, that's what yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So we have August slated for starting the North Parkade work. So you have a little bit of time to do that at I think it was at our last meeting. We kind of broached the topic a bit and said that given COVID-19 and the slowdown kind of in activity and maybe wanting to see that come back alive a bit, might not be the best time to do a parking study. We might want to wait a little longer. So we could probably come back to you in July and kind of give you the time frame for the parking study. Like I'd say even the end of June, we can maybe add that to council to see if we want to proceed with that in early July, see what can get done before any work would be started on the parkade, because you definitely would want to understand what your parking needs were.
Yep. And
then have a conversation about, given that structure and the number of years left in it, do you want to do any work to the parkade?
Thank you.
Good question. And I think we're probably all in agreement, but before we put any more money into that parkade, we really need to understand its future. Okay. Next item is this is notice amendment to policy 60, appointment of the deputy mayor. So this item has, every time we had an election for deputy mayor, we always asked ourselves, don't we do this every other year instead of every year? And then, of course, Mrs. Porterlow reminds us, no, you keep doing it every year and then asking if you do it every other year. So this will be to give notice to consider the change from annual to every other year instead. Any questions on that? Is someone prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Your Worship.
Thank you.
So the motion is that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater give notice pursuant to Section 48 of the Municipal Government Act that at the June 22nd, 2020 Council meeting, amendments to Policy 60, appointment of the Deputy Mayor, will be considered to change from an annual election to a biannual election.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I can second that.
Councillor Graves, thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none. Councillor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councillor Fougere?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
And myself, I am in favor. Thank you. So that'll come to the June 22nd meeting. Next item is the recommendation of the returning officer, deadline date for amended list of electors. So for the public, just so that they know, there is a fall municipal election in October, and it'll be very different than what we're used to, but the minister has made the decision that it is going ahead. And so in terms of that, we need a list of electors that, and so this is a recommendation from the returning officer. Any additional information that we need? It's pretty self-explanatory. Someone prepared to make them? Yes, please.
I move the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the returning officer and set a deadline date of August 21st, 2020 for the completion of the amended list of electors.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. Any discussion? Hearing none. Councillor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councillor Fougere?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
I'm in favor. Thank you. And the motion is carried. I can't believe 4 years is coming up. Next item is Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program report for May. So that is attached for your information. It's pandemic doesn't certainly doesn't reduce anything for this this program, that's for sure. I don't know if anyone wanted to speak to that.
No.
I would just continue to encourage the public to, I mean, this report will be published on our website, and there's information out there for this program. So I would say during this time of this pandemic, this has been an incredibly valuable place of reassurance for our seniors in our community. So very grateful to that. Our next item is amendment to policy 64, annual remuneration adjustments for council members. So as the public will recall, as we had a presentation, I think over a month ago, maybe a month ago, there was a citizen committee struck, independent of council, to review. This happens or is slated to happen within 6 months of an upcoming election, to review council remuneration to see if it is appropriate. And their recommendation came back that adjustments needed to be made. And so I just want to be clear to the public that this is not something that takes effect until the next council is sworn in. So I just want to make that clear. I had a couple of questions about that, and people just, that was actually their only concern, was, are we giving ourselves a raise if this motion carries? And the answer is no, we're not giving ourselves a raise. I'll just speak my personal opinion. I don't think it's appropriate for a council to vote themselves a raise, but I like the way we do it, where we're making a decision for the next council. The previous council made a decision for this council. So I think that's the most appropriate time to do it. I don't know if staff are going to speak to this. We did discuss it before. Yep. We had a presentation.
We did give notice at the March 23rd meeting, and you received your presentation from John Swain on behalf of the committee at that meeting as well, to kind of go over it. The agenda contains the policy amendments themselves and what's being changed. So you can see that the changes to the mayor, deputy mayor, and councilors' remuneration, which would take effect in November with the new council being elected. There would also be a CPI increase that would happen every year to keep the remuneration current. The previous policy didn't have that, so the remuneration wasn't kept current with CPI, so that's set to further back. And in addition to the remuneration, there would be, in recognition that there's a lot of town business that happens, shall we say, remotely, but outside of town hall, there would be a smartphone provided to councillors, and all reasonable expenses associated with that phone would be provided as well. So that's just in recognition that you do things by email, text, cell a lot, and presently councillors are using their own personal devices outside of the mayor. So this would broaden that to the deputy and councillors.
Great, thank you. Questions from members of council?
Yes, Your Worship. Councillor McGuinness here. The motion reads, and if probably someone can explain it to me, it says that it is effective immediately.
Yes, I had the same question myself. And so the policy itself does clearly state that it takes effect with the swearing in of the next council. But by moving this, the policy takes effect. It's confusing. So the changes don't take effect till the next council sworn in, but the amendments to the policy are in place now. If that, I'm poorly explaining it probably.
Yeah, I was just trying to clarify for the general public.
Yeah, I was confused myself, but as it was explained to me, I just wanted to be sure, just like you, that yeah, it does not take effect until the next council.
Would you like to have a motion, Your Worship?
Yes, please.
I move the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the revised annual remuneration adjustments. Council members as presented in document 20-075A is policy 64 for the town, effective immediately.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second that.
Deputy Mayor Tanner. Further discussion? Ready. Councillor McGuinness, yea or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Fougere.
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn.
Yay.
Councillor McDonald.
Yay.
Councillor Graves.
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner.
Yay.
I am in favor. Thank you. Motion is carried. We're now going down to business arising unfinished business, outdoor pool and the impact of COVID-19. So again, as members of the public will recall, we tried to push this discussion down as close as we can to when the summer season starts in order to make a decision, hoping that information was coming from the public. Deputy Mayor Tanner, I see you have your hand up.
I'm going to declare a conflict on this one as well, due to having an employee that is probably one of the having a child who's an employee of probably one of the largest customers of the pool, let's say.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Fougere.
Yes, I'd also like to declare a conflict of interest of being on the Barracuda's board.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Okay, and now I'll turn this over to staff. And I see Dan is here.
I can start that, Tammy, if you'd like. So in late April, we prepared the report that is in front of you. And at that time, council deferred the decision to now, assuming that we would have more information about how we might operate the pool at this time. We do not have guidance on pool operations with respect to COVID-19 confirmed at this point. The Life Saving Society, representing the sector for outdoor pools and waterfronts, has prepared a plan and it is currently in front of Dr. Strang for review and approval. So it's being evaluated at the moment. Diana has reviewed the proposal in detail and has prepared how we might consider opening the outdoor pool in light of what is in front of Dr. Strang. How could we possibly operate the pool under COVID restrictions? So there's some so we have some idea. We still have lots of questions that haven't fully been answered yet, and we don't anticipate having those answers until Dr. Strang has provided that guidance. But in some ways, one of the fundamental questions that we do need some discussion on this evening is it about is council making a decision regarding a service provision or on the budget? Because those two things are somewhat different. If it's about providing a service of having a pool to swim in, that's one decision that would say that if that's a service that we want to provide, then that is, we may really want to consider moving forward with developing and finalizing a plan for how to operate the outdoor pool with COVID restrictions. If it's primarily about budget, and not wanting to have additional budget expenditures related to, operating the outdoor pool in light of COVID, then the decision, those two things are pretty opposite. Then it's really about, okay, well, it will cost us more to provide make the pool available, the outdoor pool available this summer. So. And it's especially important because right now the social gathering limits are 10 people, and there's still some outstanding questions, and Diana can speak to that around what does it look like operating the pool if we're only allowed 10 people, and that's a question of 10 people on deck, 10 people in the pool, 10 people including lifeguards. That clarity is not there yet. If it's really about budget, then it's also, I think, connected to the whether or not and when the LCLC may open as a pool, because it may only make sense to have one pool open and only bear the expense of having one pool operating. However, again, if we're only allowing 10 to 15 people, having two pools means we're getting 20 to 30 people having the ability to swim given the run of a day. So you can see where it has been very difficult to come up with a clear path and a clear answer. So that's really, there's staffing considerations, there's how do we even organize it, requiring, I'm diving into the details and I'll leave that for Diana, but there's a lot of questions around how do we actually physically operate it. If we do open it, will we have the rentals that we typically do? Will we have the revenue sources that we typically do? And that factors into some of those budgetary questions. So we have more questions than answers for you. We are hoping to have information. We've been told by the province that we expect within a week or two to have that answer from Dr. Strang in terms of what the actual guidance will be for us to be able to open. So if you want to, I'll leave it at that. And if you have questions around how we might operate, then Diana can speak to a bit more around the modification of operations and what that means to costs and expenses, et cetera.
Okay. So Diana, we're going to turn it over to you, I think, first, because I think you have some information in terms of what we know. I know we don't know a lot, but what we know in terms of phasing, because from what I've heard, there's a series of phases that have to happen that potentially don't even lead us into a public swim ability until almost August. Am I
Correct.
right? So I'll just turn it over to you to go through that maybe perhaps.
Sure. So
that will impact our decision.
Yeah. So the Life Saving Society has proposed 4 phases, one of which is just not opening the pool at all. The other 3 phases, the first phase would include, I'm assuming, which is what would be approved by Dr. Strang first. And it really doesn't include us. We're not till phase 3. Recreational swimming comes in phase 3. We're also assuming that there'll be 28 days in between each phase. So in the bigger picture, if we're looking at an announcement, let's say best in a week's time, well, that will be phase 1. 28 days later, we'll enter phase 2, which still isn't really us. And then 28 days after that will be in phase 3, which is recreational swimming. So that takes us to August. It's still opportunity. I mean, I don't want to certainly say that there isn't. I also want to give you a picture of what it might look like, because it does get fairly complicated. It would be my suggestion not to open the facility, the building itself. We would allow swimmers to enter and exit through the side gate. We would obviously have to have directional signage around the pool deck. If we're stuck at the 10 bather limitation, again, as Jessica noted, does this include the guards on deck? We don't know. If we have a family of 5 that comes to the pool, we're already down to 5 other people that can join them. So I looked at a scenario that would say we have 5 slots of swimming, 45 minutes each over the span of 5 days. We would close for 2 days. So we would run Tuesday through Saturday, say, and close on Sunday and Monday for that deep clean and whatever else we have to do to make sure we're safe. In between each 45-minute swim, we would have 30 minutes to do a chemical analysis and clean the slide, clean the ladders, clean the chairs after everyone has been in and out. This would, again, require probably additional staff, which would be additional costs. We would need someone at the gate doing a screening of each person that came through. We also do look at some larger risks, or I'll start with registration. We would look at a registration process. So we would do a phone in. You could book your time in the pool. We'd have to figure out how many times each individual could visit the pool each week in order to allow some equality amongst everyone. We'd have to look at cost, because we're cutting the time of swimming from 2 hours to 45 minutes, say. We can change that. That's not a definite. That's just the plan that I came up with. But we would have to cut the cost from a $4 cost for a swim to maybe $2. So we're looking at a lot less revenue. If we were looking at doing rentals, we'd have to take one of these slots and maybe make it an hour slot, look at renting it to the daycare centers or the CUDAs, whichever. And again, they'd have to abide by the 10 people rule. So we're limited on that. Even if it increases to 15 in the next month, we would still be looking at low numbers. And then we run into the risks. There's a lot of risks involved for staff. There's risks involved for the facility. There's risk involved. The risks are long, and I won't get into them all. But we do look at bathroom access and how often that has to be cleaned. We're not going to open the showers. We're not going to open the change rooms, but the building would still have to be cleaned for staff. We do have to look at the physical distancing of staff. We do have to rely on the lifeguards to do the physical distancing or monitor that with the people in the pool. The responsibility for the lifeguards certainly increases. There's also training that needs to be done for specific COVID water rescue. So there's a lot to consider. And that's just kind of a little synopsis. There is a larger document that I can give you that outlines all the risks and the considerations that you would need to make an informed decision.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, council, I'm trying to gather my own thoughts here. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Yeah.
The timeline seems to bring it to mid-August.
It's certainly possible, yeah.
And these are university students. It might be open a week, if that.
I would say you maybe cross your fingers for 4 weeks, but you likely may not get that.
Yeah.
If you extend the season.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yes. Would we then, or are we in the process now of making up a plan? I know we had to make one up for the Legion. Then it has to get approved, our plan, before we can open. And there's lots of things to do. It has to be a written document, and it pretty much covers every aspect. So
I think we have to decide probably tonight if we're going to go ahead and open the pool. We're going to have to come up with a plan, but I don't think staff is going to do a plan up if council decides not to open the pool.
Right.
Now, I think the LCLC is working on opening at some point the pool.
Jessica spoke to Kent today. She might be able to add something.
Yeah, he's again, it's being dictated by the sector plan, which will say what then the plan that needs to be developed by the LCLC in order to do it. But they don't have the end date timeline that we have, which really, the later we open the pool, the shorter our operation is. For the LCLC, it's becoming operational again, and then that would continue beyond the end of the summer. So it's a different scope for them. The pressure to provide a season of swimming isn't there in the same way.
Councillor Graves.
Just thinking of those people that use the pool for extreme heat swimming and those are the individuals and families. Is there anything that we can do to help those people that maybe live in apartment buildings with no air conditioning to have access to some type of water? So maybe it's sprinklers down at Shipyards Landing or sprinklers in other parks within the town. Just throwing that out there.
I was thinking that's where my head went to as well, and my first thought was if the LCLC is moving to opening, and if we didn't open the town pool, could some of the money that we would normally spend on the town pool be redirected to ensuring that those certainly most in need can get out of that heat? Like we know every summer is going to get hotter than the one before. Your point is bang on, Councillor Graves. I'm struggling with how you take this information and actually open the pool. Like you're really opening it to the public for, like you said, best case scenario 4 weeks. Do we put our eggs in the LCLC basket for this summer, knowing that season doesn't end September or the end of August like ours does, so at least it can continue? Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, as I know how valuable that pool is to the community. I know how many people rely on it, but if it's a short season at a very high cost, very low numbers, and a huge amount of stress for staff to try to manage that and make sure that everything's operating in a safe manner, I can't see moving forward this summer. I really think, unfortunately, we're going to have to call it for this year.
So I guess how I'm looking at it for myself, and I don't know if maybe you're probably all looking at it this way. What is more important, that people are in the outdoor pool or that people are in a pool? And to me, the number one priority should be making sure those who need to get that away from the heat or get that kind of recreation, get it somewhere in the community. And at least, the LCLC is on the bus route. If it's going to open, it can. I know it comes with different restrictions too. I don't think that their 10-person limit is necessarily the same as ours because it's a recreation facility, or it's a corporation versus a recreation facility. Maybe someone.
It's unclear.
I know. I'm just had that discussion with Kent versus when we were talking about the prom photos when they're on the arena floor. They're not limited to 10 on the arena floor because the way the rules fall from the province. it's based on the size of the facility. So I'm hopeful that more information about that. Councillor Thorburn, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, two reasons. Number one, I agree with Michael and Jennifer that it's probably no hope that we can get the outdoor pool open. And I certainly would support offering some funds to the LCLC for the people that need it most. And part of the plan, I know the Legion's plan, is that we could open up based on our square footage to 50%, but you couldn't have a group any bigger than 10 in a party, as long as you have your social distancing. So you could, the maximum people that you could put in that pool at the LCLC would hold half of that, provided you could have the social distancing. So it's not restricted to 10 if you have the area. 10 in a group.
Yeah, I think the recreation facility might be different, but again, we don't have all that information yet. Yeah, Councillor McGuinness. Oh, sorry, Diana.
I was just going to say there is a formula provided in the Nova Scotia Life-Saving document. It's just not clear. It's contradictory to the previous sentence where they say there's a limitation. So the clarity of that is just, it's not there.
Okay. Councillor McGuinness.
Yeah, it's fairly obvious that the pool shouldn't open this summer, and I think it's reasonable to have staff work on an alternative for these people that need the pool and spend their time on that. But we should be making that decision based on the facts we have here this evening, and it looks to me that the pool should not open.
It is unfortunate, but I think we're all starting to see that now. To CAO, do you need a motion to that effect, or is it just a recommendation to staff to not?
That was one item that we deferred in the COVID-19 budget adjustments was the pool closure. So we had in there a loss of revenue, I think of around 30, and we had an operating expense of around 50. So we deferred that. So preferably we would have a motion to direct that the pool not be open this year and those budget adjustments be made. And then what I'm hearing is that there should be some direction given to staff to look at an alternative option for residents within the town who may need access to some type of cooling alternatives during the hot summer days.
And if I could, also the report that was deferred to tonight's agenda also has a request regarding the sponsorship agreement for the pool. So staff at that time have made a recommendation that if the pool remains closed for the 2020 summer season, that Town Council extend the term of the sponsorship agreement for the outdoor pool to September 30th, 2021, and defer payment for the fifth and final payment of the agreement to next fiscal year. Because that is that's 20,000 of the 30,000 lost revenue that we're anticipating.
And probably now is a good time to thank the sponsors for their willingness to put this year on hold and move the agreement forward a year. So, okay, is someone on council prepared to make a motion? Maybe we'll deal with a couple of these together, or separate rather. So to make a motion to not open the outdoor pool for the 2020 season.
I'll make that motion, Your Worship, that we not open the pool for the 2020 season.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Graves. Further discussion? Hearing none. Councillor McGuinness. Oh, sorry, Councillor Thorburn.
No, just calling for question.
Okay, sorry. Councillor McGuinness.
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn.
Yay.
Councillor McDonald.
Yay.
Councillor Graves.
Yay.
And myself, I am in favor. So the next one, let's deal with the sponsorship. So someone prepared to move that we extend the sponsorship agreement till, did you say August 31st, 2021?
September.
September
30th, yeah.
September 30th, 2021. Someone prepared to move that?
So moved.
Councillor McGuinness, seconded by?
Second.
Councillor Thorburn. Any further discussion?
Question.
Question being called, Councillor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald,
Yay.
Councillor Graves.
Yay.
I'm in favor of that. And then the third piece, I guess it's to direct staff to at least investigate some options for the community. I don't know if you want to say during hot weather events or heat waves, or if you need to just say that, or just alternatives for the community to get out of the heat.
Yeah. We know the intent, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, someone prepared. Yeah, Councillor Graves, seconded by
I'll second it then.
Councillor Thorburn. Any discussion?
Question?
Councillor McGuinness,
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn,
Yay.
Councillor McDonald,
Yay.
Councillor Graves,
Yay.
and myself in favor, and so that is passed. Thank you. It was not fun or easy. Thank you to staff for that information. And I guess I'll just say sorry to the community. I know there's a lot of people who rely on this pool, and we will endeavor to find an alternative for you to get away from the heat. So, we'll welcome back Councillor Frazier and Deputy Mayor Tanner. And then we'll move to the next item, which is proposed policy, public disclosure of grants to organizations. And then turn it over to staff.
All right. So this is, the notice was given at our last meeting that council would consider this policy tonight. So the Municipal Government Act was amended in, I believe it was 2019. And at that time, it required that municipalities adopt a policy that outlined how they would disclose information with respects to grants that they awarded. Prior to that, the Municipal Government Act just stated that a municipality must publish or advertise grants that were awarded within the fiscal year with little detail given and no direction in terms of what was to be included in that notice. So we developed a policy that's being brought forward for council's consideration. This policy does change our procedure a bit in that we're not suggesting that we use a local paper to advertise the grants that were awarded. Rather, we use our website, social media, and our own newsletter that goes out to households within town to advertise or to advise the public with respects to grants were awarded. And it would be all grants, not just grants that are awarded under your grants policy. So any nonprofit organization that receives a grant, money from the town for projects, whatever it may be, would be disclosed within this list. And the policy essentially states that we would have this list prepared no later than 60 days at the end of after the end of the fiscal year, and the list would contain the name of the group of the organization and the amount that was awarded to that as well. And it indicates that we'll use social media, website, and the town's newsletter to advertise that.
Okay. Questions? Pretty straightforward. Hearing none, someone prepared to make a motion?
I will, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I move that Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater approve the public disclosure of grants organizations policy as presented in document 20-094 as policy 102 for the town, effective immediately.
Thank you. Seconded by
I'll second the motion.
Councillor Frazier. Thank you. Further discussion?
Question?
Question being called. Councillor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councillor Frazier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
And I'm in favor. Thank you. Motion is carried. We'll go to the next one, which is Sun Life demutualization. I wanted to say it's pretty straightforward, but I think probably for the public, they probably would need a bit of an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Turn that over to the CAO, perhaps.
So this is actually carrying out a direction that was given in 2001 with a little bit of a twist. So the town had shares in Sun Life that were sold, and that had a value of $19,868.20 in 2001. And the direction or the motion given by council at that time was that those shares just to be split, so that half went to the employees of the town at that time, and the other half would remain in town with the town. That direction was never carried out. The shares were sold, but they were just placed in an account and weren't distributed. Given the length of time that's passed since that motion was passed, and understanding that if those funds were distributed to staff, there would have been interest on that, those types of things that they didn't get to realize because it hasn't been done. It's being recommended that we kind of clean up the direction that was given by carrying it out, but in addition to the motion that was passed, it's being recommended that we distribute the entire amount to the employees that would have been eligible at that time. So that means that there may be some that are presently on our payroll, there are some that are no longer on our payroll, and there may be some who are deceased. So it may be their estate, because it's been almost 20 years. So what the recommendation is that we would do that at less any cost that we incur to locate those employees, or in any legal costs to locate them as well. So we would distribute once we've had those costs determined. The difference would be distributed amongst that with the staff. So that's what the recommendation is, and I believe the motion would put that into effect.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Someone prepared to make that motion?
I will, Your Worship.
I'll make the motion.
Councillor Thorburn, I believe, was first.
I would move that council for the town of Bridgewater direct staff to make reasonable efforts to distribute the proceeds of the sale of the Sun Life shares in 2001, $19,868.20, net of any external cost to locate former employees or estates of former employees to employees on the group insurance detailed list dated November the 1st, 2001, with the proceeds to be allocated based on life insurance and the LTD premium shown on that listing.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. Further discussion? Hearing none. Councillor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councillor Vergier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Sorry, yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
And I am in favor. Thank you. Our second last item is confirmation of strategic projects for the 2020-2021 operating budget. So there's some positions in there that we had discussed for quite a while, that we have to make a decision on whether we want to move forward with these or not. So I'll turn it over to the CAO to maybe give a quick synopsis.
Sure. So as we indicated in April, when council approved the budget, we would do that check-in on some of the items that were strategic but not a part of your normal budget, and confirm that you wish to proceed with them given the impacts of COVID-19 on our operating cost and our loss of revenue that we incurred as well. So the positions that we have, or the items that we have here in the report for you to consider tonight, are the position 1 of grant coordinator. This position was discussed by council as one that would be responsible for sourcing grants to offset the town's some of the town's operating costs, not all obviously, and cost of capital initiatives and projects. So sourcing grants, applying for them, administering them is a very cumbersome task, and it takes a lot of time and effort to do so. Right now, it's on the corner of individuals' desks. It's kind of distributed throughout the organization, and there's definitely concern that there's grants that we're not applying for simply because we haven't had time to source them and apply for them. So this position would be responsible for understanding our priorities, sourcing the grants, administering the grants, submitting the claims, and the follow-up reports that would follow from that. The budget has 10 months worth of salary, and that includes salary and all employers' costs. So it's $63,993. That's the training, mileage, those types of things as well. It's anticipated that given the time of year, by the time we recruit it and have the individual in place, we'd probably only be at 8 months worth of salary. The next position is Economic Development Officer. And this position was discussed by council during the workshop when we were discussing what role the town could play in economic development. At that time, we talked about a number of things like a BID, a business improvement district, and also an economic development officer position itself. We brought in representatives from Halifax and Yarmouth. One was with the Business Improvement District in Halifax, and the other was an economic development officer with Yarmouth. After having the meeting and discussing what possible influence or activities the council could be successfully involved in with respect to economic development, it was felt that an economic development officer's position should be considered in this year's budget. So this year's budget has 6 months worth of salary, and that is $46,618, and that includes benefits and training as well. So that's all in there. The third is a finance position, and this is an existing position that's been working full-time hours, but has been able to do so for the past several years, given the purchase of vacation time by a former employee. So under the town's policy, you can buy additional time, subject to the CAO's approval. And so this individual's been doing this for a number of years, and that money has been used to offset the hours of this individual. The positions needed simply for a segregation of duties aspect. If council remembers, we had our internal control audit done, and only on a portion of the finance department's operations. And some of the things that came out were that there needs to be a greater segregation of duties. And that means that you need to divide up tasks. And when you have a small department, that becomes challenging to do. So this position was seen by the former director of finance and our accountant as something that was essential in order to maintain the segregation of duties that we do have, and to look at how we can further implement the report that came from our auditors on internal control. If it's not approved, the position would return to part-time, and that would have a strain on the finance department now, because that position's been working full-time for the last few years. The fourth is remuneration review. The council has a policy that states that, that's policy P24, annual salary increase, that states that there will be a periodic market survey conducted to enable the town to ensure that salary levels for job positions are consistent with the external market. And to ensure that we adhere to that, what we'll be looking at is funds in the budget that would engage someone external to the organization to do develop a position classification system that creates some equity and fairness in position remuneration. So right now it's done on an individual position basis. There's, I guess, pros and cons to the various models, but this position would look at this classification system and then look at compensation and compare what the employees make to market and make a recommendation with respect to if there are adjustments warranted, what would they be. So there's $20,000 in the budget for the study and $25,000 for implementation. And the implementation would be subject to council's approval, of course, and in the classification system as well. But this would provide the funds to enable that to happen. The implementation probably wouldn't happen until the latter part of the fiscal year, so it could be less than $25,000 that would be required, depending on when the study got done. The last review was completed in 2015-16. So we're about 5 years from the last review. And as I indicated, the results of the review would come back to council for approval prior to implementation. So in terms of service levels, what we would see here are 2 new service levels created. One is a grant coordinator, and that would be an internal service improvement to provide support to departments and council to find funds to pay for our initiatives. And the economic development officer would be a new service level that would provide support to council and the business community, obviously aiming to retain, to grow, and to attract new businesses to our area.
Okay, so you're looking for some direction here tonight?
I am. Yep.
Okay. There's a lot in there. Councillor Graves.
Just a question in regards to the remuneration review. Would it make sense to try and work with the other municipal units to come up with something that's standard? And that may also involve the library and the LCLC and other.
Yeah, so some of the other municipal units have already gone through this process, and they've hired consultants to do this work for them. With the consultant that would be engaged would look at the other municipal units and what their compensation is, look at their positions, what's comparable. It would also look at private sector as well and see what the market's paying for various positions that require the same level of expertise, responsibility, and similar functions, and then come up with a recommendation on classifications and ranges. So the idea is that at the end of this study, we would be comparable to all of our municipal units. So I think the District of Lunenburg did one maybe 2 years ago. Chester did one recently. That Wolfville did one. Like they've done these, so the consultants will have up-to-date data to work with. We're suggesting an external one because, the time involved in doing it, we don't have a dedicated resource to do that given our workload. And two, it gives you the comfort level that it's an external recommendation coming to council as well.
Would it be cheaper if we did it all together, though? The 5 municipal units in Lunenburg County? Would it make?
Yeah, it would have, but as I indicated, some of them have already done it, so they're probably not going to turn around and do it 2 years later. And given that they hired consultants, it's difficult for us to just go take the work that was done.
Other questions?
Yes, Your Worship.
Yes, Councilor McGinnis.
I have a couple of questions. One being the costs that are outlined there for the grant coordinator and the economic development officer. Is that all in cost? And when I say that, when you hire a staff member, they need an office, they need a computer, and that type of thing.
So that included the furniture, the training, the travel for these positions. We'd be looking at our space to see where we could put a desk. We may have to look at, work from home arrangements and different things like that if there are space limitations. But it did include everything. And as indicated, it was 10 months for the grant coordinator and 6 months for the economic development officer. So a full fiscal year would have a larger number, but you wouldn't have the computer and desk expense that we have built into this number.
You just answered my second question. Those salaries are for half the year.
10 months and 6 months, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
For me, like the finance position, part-time to full-time, that person's doing that work now anyway, and we need it as per our audit recommendations. So for me, I'm comfortable with that one. The remuneration review, I think it's important, and it's fair for it's how we become fair or ensure fairness with our employees. So I don't have any issues with that. It's the other two positions and the timing, of course, and for me, the grant coordinator, I don't have any issues with, because I think now more than ever, there's going to be money made available from the different levels of government, but it's not going to be easy to get. So they're going to, we've already seen it, right? There's 500 different pots of money. I feel like they're almost saying we've hid money in these 500 different pots, so try to find them. And so we need someone whose job it is to find that money for us. And one of the other questions I asked, because I think it's something we do miss quite often when thinking of these calculations, and I'm going to use our Director of Community Development, for example, because she also wears the hat of the Director of our Parks, Recreation, and Culture. So Mrs. McDonald spends a lot of time looking for grants for all the different hats that she wears on our behalf as director. And that's a lot of time that is going to be freed up with this position for her to keep the momentum of development going. And so when I look at what's a better use of our senior staff's time, is it searching for grants, or is it, focusing on really what their department is? I think I'm very comfortable with the grant coordinator because I think it'll more than pay for itself. What I'm struggling with is the economic development officer, and I guess I need I need to know a little bit more about what an economic development officer is really going to bring to the town. I know I thought I knew what it was, right? They could work on the bid proposal, and they could work on when we're trying to attract new businesses to the new business park. But is 2020 the year for that, or is 2021 the year for that? Just based on the interchange isn't going to be finished for a couple of years. So that's kind of where my head's at. I'd love some input from council. I see Deputy Mayor has his hand up.
Yeah, I mean, any of the business articles I've read, including the Harvard Business Review as an example, basically says that during these downturn times, if you have the ability as an entrepreneur, seize every opportunity you can, because everybody else is feeling so much pain, so to speak, that this is the time to sort of buy low, sell high. And so I fully support both of those positions. The grant coordinator will pay for itself. They'll seek out new opportunities, and the economic development officer, this is a great time to reach out to entrepreneurs that are starting up new businesses and so on. And I fully support both.
Others, what are the thoughts of other members?
I would tend to agree with that. I would say the economic development officer might be one of the more important positions we employ at this point in time. I think it could be crucial for our local economy and our town. So I would say that both of those are important now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Graves, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I would also agree with Andrew and Bill. It's a good time to set the table. There's a lot of work that has to be done to present the town in a good light, and now's the time to start. So when things pick up, we're ready to go.
Okay, Councillor Frazier.
Yes, I know this came out of our strategic plan and workshop, and we thought long and hard, I guess, when we did that. I guess I'm supportive of both those positions. I guess a question that I have would be, when doing the budget and forecasted, did that figure come in line to what we had? Did we forecast what these positions would be when we were doing a projection? I know that you've got costs in there for her training and desks and so on. I'm just wondering, is that in line to what we had projected?
Yeah, so these numbers came right out of the budget that was developed and approved by council in April. So yeah, they're
everything. Yeah, there was no change then.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Councillor McDonald, I believe you were next.
Yeah, I think Michael kind of said what I was thinking, that the economic development officer has some work ahead of them to kind of lay the groundwork, plant the seeds, build a plan, get out and meet people, and build some relationships. And to the deputy mayor's point, in a downtime, let's find the opportunity. So I think it's better to be proactive in this than to wait until we have everything lined up and then start looking for the opportunities. So hopefully they can find some of those opportunities out there and direct them towards us. So I think this is a good time to jump on that position and that opportunity.
Great, thank you. Councillor Thurban. Let's see, you had your hand up.
Yep, let's get her going.
All right. You're feisty today. I love it. Love it. No questions on the other two, the remuneration review or the finance position? I didn't hear any concerns with those. Okay. Love the feedback. This is great. So Tammy, you're looking for a motion to, or is there approved in the budget, so we just go ahead?
Yeah, that's right. If you don't want to change anything, then I've got the approval from April 14th, and I'll just proceed.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not hearing any objections, and in fact, it's the opposite. So, as Councillor Thurban said, let's get going. Let's get her done. Our last item is the additional infrastructure cost of the business park. So we had this discussion just recently, and so I know the CIO wants to just talk about this a little bit more.
All right, I'm going to share my screen, I think.
There you go. Perfect.
We're good? All right.
Yep.
Okay, so at our discussion session, we advised council that as we work with the Department of Transportation at looking at the interchange that's being proposed, the Department of Transportation is seeking some direction from us on how we wish to proceed with some of the infrastructure there. So the interchange is being designed right now, and they're looking at a connector road. That was the result of a traffic study that indicated that in addition to the interchange, we should do a connector road that would loop back down on the north side of the 103 back down to the St. Philip's, the Auburndale end of St. Philip's. And they're seeking some direction with respect to what we'd like to see there in terms of sidewalk, and we need some direction about whether or not we want to put sewer or water along those roads as well. So the default standard that the province will use if we give no guidance is their standard. That's the transportation standard. We'll have gravelled shoulders and there'll be no sewer and water. And the interchange would not have a sidewalk included in it. Anything that we decide to do in excess of the DOT standard is going to be at 100% of the town's cost. So that would be in addition to the $4.2 million that the town has committed already to the project. The options that were brought forward to council to consider at the discussions session included sidewalk and AT infrastructure on the connector road and also on the overpass, and sewer and water services to the overpass and along the connector road. So the DOT standard, as I said, if we don't do anything, that's what it's going to be. And it'll be asphalt road with gravelled shoulders, open ditch, no pedestrian crossing on the overpass, and no sewer and water. And there'd be no additional costs beyond the $4.2 million that we've already committed. If we looked at just doing the sidewalk on the overpass, and that might be something that you'd want to consider at a minimum, that would be an extra $400,000. The reason why you would want to consider that now is because it's more effective to include it in the design and the construction now at $400,000 than deciding 10 years from now that you want to add it, when it could be 3 to 4 times the cost. Because the overpass is already built, and it's much more complicated to hang a sidewalk off the side of the overpass at that time. So you'd be looking at increasing that $400,000 to $1.5 million, and that's based on today's dollars, not 10 years from now. There would be, as I indicated, if we just did the sidewalk on the overpass, no sewer or water under the roads going across the overpass or on the connector road. And the additional investment by the town would be $400,000, resulting in a total investment for this project of $4.6 million. So what does that look like? We showed you these numbers before, and I just based it on the $4.2 million, and I had Kim run these again, and Kim should be here as well if you have any questions. But it looks like our debt service ratio at 4.2. Well, you can see how it increases from 2019-20 up to 2028-29 at 14.92. In addition to just looking at this number, which is your ratio, and we know that we can't go over 15% without some concern being raised by the province that we're starting to get into levels where there's a concern about our ability to make our debt payments. We need to look at what our debt payments would actually be. So this year, our debt payments are around $1 million. And with the additional $4.2 million being added in over the next 2 years, and we would see our payments go from $1 million to $2.8 million. So that's operating costs. So in our budget, we, through our tax rate, pay for $1 million. We'd be paying for 2.8 by 2028-29. In these numbers, the revenues include an assumption of assessment growth of 2%. So it could be more, could be less, but that's kind of what we used. And we also look at what our projected operating costs are as well. So we've made some assumptions about growth and some assumptions about operating expenses as well. and it's based on our capital plan that council's seen. So what does that mean? Like when we talk about having our debt service costs go up, that means that in our budget, we're going to have to find some additional money. And you can kind of see how we show that. If we keep the tax rate the same, and I think it's important for council to note that it could be your tax rate, it could be your sewer rate. One of the things we talked about was taking our sewer rate and transitioning it to a full cost recovery and not having the general rate pay for that. But either way, it's new revenue through a tax or a charge that would make the difference up. So you can see if we kept our tax rate at 1.65 for residential and 397 for commercial, around 22-23 we start to run into a deficit. And this is an accumulative deficit, so it would accumulate to this because we're not allowed to have deficits in any one year. We have to carry it forward to the next year. So you could see that it's not going to be feasible to keep the rate the same with the assumptions on growth of 2% and our operating expenses as well. And also this is also built on the assumption that federal funding is there for what we know. So I think around 2023 we stopped, or 2024 we stopped showing federal funding for infrastructure projects because there hasn't been any new funds announced that allow us to gain that yet. But you can see that we would have to do an adjustment to our tax rate, so we'd have to go from here to there to make up those differences. So inevitably, even at the 4.2, we need to increase our access to cash to pay for our debt service. And we'd have to look at ways to do that. The grant coordinator could be someone that can help offset some of our cost. But I think it's important to kind of go in with the eyes open about what that means if things remain status quo. If we did I like to call it the full meal deal, that we looked at sewer and water and sidewalk along the overpass from Logan Road and cross and over the connector and back down to St. Phillips, we'd be looking at $6.4 million. So that would give you your sidewalks, it would give you a road to town standards with sanitary and storm, and sewer and water. That would change our investment from 4.2 to 10.6 million. So that's what we'd be looking at having to borrow over the next few years for that. So this is what it does to our debt service ratio. It brings us up over 15%. Again, 2% growth, and assuming that federal funding there's no federal funding for infrastructure projects past 2023, I believe it is, without nothing being announced. So if something comes up, that's going to reduce the amount that we have to borrow. And of course, this shows you what that means in terms of your debt servicing costs. So your debt servicing costs go from $1 million to 3.3, and that of course means that your tax rate would have to be adjusted around the same period of time, and it would have to go up over the next several years to keep your debt service ratio in line with the 15% as the max. Since then, since our discussion session last week, management did meet and we kind of talked about, well, is there another option that's kind of middle of the road? We still get some infrastructure that we would consider to be essential for development on land north of the 103, but it doesn't take us all the way. One of the things we were concerned about was putting a road in and not having sewer and water under it, and then having to tear that up to put sewer and water in 10 years from now. And even though the province would be paying for that road now, our commitment wouldn't exceed the 4.2, I should say, that we originally agreed to, it's still the same taxpayer at the end of the day paying for the infrastructure. So one option we have would be to do the Trans-DOT road standard, which would be gravel shoulders, open ditch, and we could put sewer and water under the road and just have a sidewalk on the overpass, but not on the connector road going back to St. Phillips. We can always come in after the fact, 10 years from now, whatever that date may be, and add sidewalks to the road without having to tear the road up. So it wouldn't be wasting money putting the road in now without the sidewalks in place. That would take our contribution from 4.2 million to 8.4 million. And what that looks like is, of course, your debt costs are going to go up. Your debt service ratio is going to go up as well. And that means that your tax rate is going to have to increase too. But again, the amounts are different, and your debt servicing costs will stay below 15% with those tax rate increases to pay for that increased debt service cost that you'll be encountering. So the decisions that we're really looking for council to make tonight are, what is it that you want to do with the infrastructure? Do you want to just consider looking at the overpass with the sidewalk and using the DOT road? Do you want to add in sewer and water and in sidewalk, or just sewer and water with the sidewalk on the overpass only, so that we can give the Department of Transportation some direction with respects to where we want to go in terms of design, because they need to know that as well. I would kind of point out to you that we are doing a town's master plan, so this is kind of ahead of the game, unfortunately, but it is the timing of the project. And that master plan is going to look at areas within the town and where how infrastructure should be laid out and how it could be developed. So that area is one north of the 103 that we would be looking at. Glen Allen's another area. We have the town broken up into areas. And we did talk about, as this gets built, and it's going to take a couple years for this infrastructure to be put in place, we may want to start looking at a marketing strategy and highest and best use, and come up with values and appropriate land uses for that area as we get ready to market it. But unfortunately, the decision about at least some of the infrastructure needs to be made now, given that the project is underfunding under the National Trade Corridor, and there's a timeline for which the project has to be started and completed to get that funding.
Tammy, just probably the first obvious question is, your calculations assume no other sources of government funding? It's based on our 10-year capital plan, so I believe it's after 2023 when our known sources of funding. So we still have gas tax in there and that type of thing, but what we don't have is any infrastructure funding, large infrastructure funding like we have for some of our wastewater works now. Okay. One of the things that I think we have to give a little thought to is that the federal government has recently announced that the capital and investment program, they're going to open up funding opportunities for municipalities, but that's not new money. It was a 10-year program. They're taking the year's money that they had allocated out in future years and bringing that forward. So what's going to be available 4 or 5 years from now, I don't know. But this doesn't assume that there's anything. And obviously, as that money, if funds become available, we'll be jumping on them to try to lower the amount that we have to borrow and thus decrease our debt servicing costs. Right. I just wanted to make sure that's clear, because I'd rather project a worst case scenario than make these assumptions, bold assumptions of millions of dollars of funding. It should be accurate. So, hey, who wants to go first on this one? I think Councillor Graves was first. You're muted there, Councillor.
Does the water and sewer bring it to the north side of the 103? So does it bring it across to the 103? And if it does, how easy is it if a business wanted to come in, so say it's a hotel or say it's a warehouse, how easy would it be to connect them up? Would everything be, sorry, go ahead.
Well, this would bring it across the overpass onto the connector road and down. Water would loop back. Sewer would just go to the town line. In terms of how easy it would be to connect, it depends on how development unfolds there.
Okay.
But the intent is that, well, you need those lines to go across in order for the connection to be possible. But the location of, say, a hotel or whatever it may be would kind of dictate how long the line had to be. We still have to look at capacity within our own wastewater treatment system. So in our capital plan, you'll see that we have millions of dollars there to address capacity issues. Those don't go away. So we still have to be cognizant of that as well when we look at connection.
And if we didn't do it, it would be considerably more, say in 3 years' time, once the bridge is built. If we decided.
Yeah, because you're tearing up roads and you got to run. I think Larry can probably explain it better in terms of options to get it across to 103, whether you're drilling or hanging it on the bridge or whatever, but it would be more than if you did it now.
Deputy Mayor Tanner.
Tammy, we're still not 100% clear on who will own that connector road or where that connector road will be placed. Is that correct?
Larry, do you recall what they said there? If it would be DOT or us, or they weren't sure?
As far as in town, the town would own it, I'll say, outside the extent of the interchange. If it's outside of town, I don't believe it was clear whether TIR would be in ownership or the municipality.
So at what point will we know where that's going to be placed? I mean, that kind of factors into this decision, I guess, a little bit.
We are looking at two routes, and the routes haven't been finalized. TIR certainly plays a big part in that, in which route, I guess, is selected.
If we talk about the two scenarios where there's both sewer and water, but the road standard is different, so the TIR standard versus the town standard, that's just curb, gutter, and paving, or curb and gutter, I guess, and sidewalk. So if it's just the TIR standard, we don't have to dig up the road or the pipes or anything if we get a large business or a bunch of businesses coming in and we need to change the road to our standard, correct? It's just adding curb and gutter?
That's correct. We would look at having it designed like for a town standard, but not necessarily constructed, but at least that design and that, that idea is there. It just would be adding asphalt, curb, and sidewalks at a later date.
So it would look like Logan Road does now, and then if it needed to change, it would look like York Street after.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor McGuinness. You're muted, Bill.
Here we go. Sorry. If we get a major development on that new land to be developed, do we have the capacity to handle the wastewater coming from that? i.e. a hotel.
It would need to be, I guess, analyzed depending on the type of development. We certainly would have to look at that and potentially whether there be any infrastructure upgrades required within the system. But the cost estimates that are provided included, I'll say, serviced lots along the connector road. So it does include some allowance for serviced lots.
Other questions? To me, that the services need to be in the ground. I feel like if you're gonna hire an economic development officer and say, you know what, this is the place you want to set up your business, and someone responds with, "That's great, we're coming," and then our response is, "Well, you're gonna have to give us a minute because we're not ready." I don't know how you sell raw land that's not serviced. Councillor Graves, I think your hand was up first. Just unmute.
Sorry about that. So just a question in regards to the sewer. If there has to be a wastewater treatment plant upgrade to accommodate this, or the construction of a new one, say a modular sewer plant on the west side, that's also going to add to the debt, isn't it? And is that being taken into consideration?
Our capital plan right now, our 10-year capital plan, and the numbers that you saw tonight include upgrades to our collection system, so pump stations, pipes, as well as our treatment plant itself. But the required work will extend beyond the 10-year capital plan. But we've incorporated what we know for the 10 years. And we are in the process of having a whole study done on our sewer shed area to look at our entire system and the phasing of improvements and what they anticipate that would cost.
Councillor Thorburn.
Yes, Tammy, that $8.4 million project, that includes everything except for the sidewalks, which will be built to the standards that they could be at a later date.
Yeah, and it would be open ditch, so yeah. there wouldn't be any curb. Yeah.
And the other question would be, if that goes out into the MOL side of the things, they would be responsible for installing and sewer and water to feed their developments past the town line?
At this point, my understanding, and Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, is the water has to loop back and will, but sewer would stop at the town line. And if they wish to have that extended, then they would be responsible for the capital cost to do that, and it'd be subject to our approval for connection back into our system.
Okay, thank you.
Is that correct, Larry? Saw you pop up.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say council has a policy now that, you know, extending sewer outside of town is not an option, so it would have to come back to council.
Probably should look at changing that option. When the town line stops, services stop.
All right, so we do need to give some direction to staff. You've got the options there. I know we had at one point discussed, as Tammy said, the full meal deal, and then there's a couple of other scenarios there for you. There's the one that is the DOT standard for the road, and then there's the one where there's no services put in. Other than, I think we're all in agreement that getting the sidewalk across the bridge is a must, just because the cost it goes way up if you don't do it. But the staff needs some direction on where we want to go with the other pieces of infrastructure for this development. What are we thinking?
I'm in favor of the $8.4 million version.
So there's the DOT standard.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that as well.
That one didn't include the sidewalk though, right?
Correct. Yeah. But the road doesn't need to be torn up to add it. It can just be literally added.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's where I'm leaning to for that very reason. I wouldn't want to have to go in after and tear things up and throw good money after that.
That one seems to be the most feasible right now.
We need a sidewalk. We need a sidewalk, wastewater, and water. So I'm in agreement with.
So the sidewalk, you mean beyond the bridge, though, Councillor Graves? No. Okay. Sidewalk on the. Okay. And then get the grants coordinator working.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Alongside with the economic development.
Well, yeah, because grants offset the cost, and net new tax revenue also.
Yeah.
And I go back to my thoughts about, like, we had this discussion with Glen Allen, right, when we extended Glen Allen. So I know commercial isn't the same as residential, but I know what this community offers. So I know there's a lot to offer for new businesses. The others, anyone else?
8.4 million.
Okay, Councillor McDonald. Okay, I see Councillor McDonald sharing ahead and Councillor McGuinness. Okay. Do you need a motion to that effect? Okay, we need someone to make a motion to approve the DOT standard. Are you okay if we just call it that? With the sidewalk across the bridge?
Yeah, the DOT road with sewer and water and a sidewalk on the overpass.
Okay, someone prepared to make that motion.
So moved.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Tanner, seconded by
I'll second.
I'll second.
Councillor Thorburn. You two are like in,
Yeah.
it's both of you today.
Yeah.
All right, Councillor McGinnis,
Yay.
Councillor Frazier,
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn,
Yay.
McDonald,
Yay.
Councillor Graves,
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner,
Yay.
and I am in favor, and we have a lot of work to do. Well, no, Tammy's going to be, yes, you have a lot of work to do. Okay. Thank you. That was the last item on the for the regular meeting. We have 2 in-camera items. Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Thorburn, seconded
I'll second
by
it.
Councillor Frazier. We are adjourned. We'll see you in the other meeting. Thank you.